The UN Security Council gives the go-ahead for outside military intervention in Libya. But who will lead the operation? Where will be the centre of command and control? Western diplomats insist Arab League forces must be part of the offensive. The Gaddafi regime has declared an immediate ceasefire. But will words become action? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. A week ago here in Cairo, the Arab League called for a no-fly zone to be imposed over Libya. Now the United Nations Security Council has gone a step further, authorizing what it calls all necessary measures to protect civilians in Libya. This essentially a go-ahead for airstrikes against Gaddafi forces. It is important, though, that there is no mandate for the deployment of ground troops. UN Resolution 1973 was approved by 10 nations, 5 abstained. China, Russia, India, Germany and Brazil all expressed reservations about armed intervention in Libya. France has said airstrikes could come within hours. But as yet, no decision has been taken on who will spearhead the operation, with the US making it clear it will not take on this role. The onus is now on the Arab states that endorsed the concept of a no-fly zone in the first place. In a response to the resolution, the Gaddafi regime has declared an immediate ceasefire and pledged to cease all military operations. But indications are that plans for military intervention are still being put in place. Well, joining me now to discuss this in Cairo, Ezzeddine Shukri Fashir, a political science lecturer at the American University in Cairo and former diplomat at the Egyptian Foreign Ministry. And in London, Juma El Gamati, a political activist and writer. Welcome to you both. Well, let's begin with you, Ezzeddine Shukri Fashir. Can the words of the Gaddafi authorities be accepted when they say they will declare an immediate ceasefire?
No, the words cannot be accepted. But if there is actually a ceasefire in place, I think this will play a role on determining the reaction from the international community. However, because of the way in which the resolution is drafted, the fact that it authorizes all possible measures to protect civilians, that means no-fly zone only is not going to be enough. If Gaddafi, all what he does is stop flying, that's not going to be enough. So if they go ahead with the plans declared earlier by Saif al-Islam Gaddafi that they will encircle Benghazi and then send counter-terrorism troops in, that could be interpreted as threatening civilians in Benghazi and therefore offer grounds for intervention.
Well, we'll go into the nuts and bolts of such an intervention a little bit later, but first I'd like to go to Juma Gamati and ask his response to that question. Is the words of the Libyan Authority to be trusted when they say there will be an immediate end to military operations?
I think the world will be interested in what's going on the ground and not what Gaddafi says. I think, and I'm confident that Gaddafi is up to his old tricks. This is a ploy. It's a political trickery. I know for a fact, just before I walked into the studio, that the city of Misrata, the third largest city in Libya, 190 kilometers east of Tripoli, is being encircled and bombarded very heavily by tanks and artillery. You know, indiscriminate bombardment of residential areas and most likely killing lots of civilians. Also the city of Nalut and Zintan and the far west region, what we call the Western Mountain, are being encircled and bombarded. I think Gaddafi's words are very hollow, they are meaningless. What he is trying to do is trying to diffuse the situation. He's trying to deflect attention away from military strikes which are imminent and to try to buy time and use this trick and also use the trick that they need an international inspection team to come in and inspect things on the ground. I think he knows that the strikes are imminent and he's trying to use any tricks up his sleeves to try to deflect them and avoid them if he can.
Well, let's take a look at the diplomatic circumstances surrounding all of this. Ezzeddine Shukri Fashir, we know at the United Nations there's been intense lobbying going on. Very important for those countries supporting the UNSC resolution that Arab nations be seen to be taking part in this action. How important is it for it to have that authenticity and to be accepted in the Arab region as a whole?
Well, foreign intervention is very difficult to accept in the Arab region in general. And as you have seen, the Arab League couldn't reach consensus itself on a resolution about the Libyan question. In a way, what the Arab League did when it passed the ball to the Security Council is to hide behind the Security Council in a way that will then enable those who oppose the intervention to come back later and criticize this intervention, even if the Arab League as a whole has asked the Security Council to impose a no-fly zone. So this is it's a game where you shift the blame on someone else. But yes, it is important. The more there is Arab buying in, the more there is Arab participation in this process, the less the criticism this process is likely to get in the Arab world. However, no-fly zone includes also airstrikes. Imposing a no-fly zone means you go in a preemptive way and take out air defense and take out a number of military installations. There will be people dead in this operation. And with this happening, there will be outcry in the region, even by those who criticize Gaddafi, that this is not the way. In a way, we are in a catch-22. But I think we have gone beyond this issue right now. We, with the Arab League de facto incapable of taking a decision, of assuming its responsibility, of adopting a robust resolution that would deter Gaddafi from using his military against the civilians, I think they basically passed the bar to the international community. Now the international community is coming in, will do it its way, with the casualty that will be involved, with some Arab participation.
But there's also the possibility, if I may just put this to Juma Gamati in London, the possibility that the ball has been thrown right back into the court of the Arab nations. There was the call for the no-fly zone to be imposed. It has gone to the UN Security Council, as it would in proper diplomatic processes and protocols. But now coming back to some of those Arab nations that supported that endorsement of a no-fly zone is a request for them to put action where their words are, to actually give financial assistance as well as logistical involvement in this operation.
I think that is already in place. What we've heard last night from New York is that at least 5 Arab nations are taking part in this operation. It has been highlighted that at least 5 of them are taking part in what way or in one way or another, possibly through finance, possibly through lending some AWACS aeroplanes, or maybe through enforcing the no-fly zone by, I don't know, I'm not sure who the 5 countries are. I think we may have identified Qatar and United Arab Emirates as 2. We don't know who the other 3 are. So, or possibly cooperating in enforcing the no-fly zone closely because there might be neighboring Arab countries who are taking part. I think also there is a much wider participation in other European countries. We've heard today, for example, that's Norway and Denmark and Italy are all taking part, and probably other European Union countries. I think we're going to have a wide range of European and Arab countries taking part, but probably France and the UK are taking the leading role and the main role in implementing the military strikes, what they call surgical strikes, at Gaddafi's forces. And by the way, this thing about civilian casualties, of course, we don't want civilian casualties, but what is the alternative? The alternative is to allow Gaddafi forces to carry on encircling cities like Misrata and Ijdabiya and Zintan and shelling them continually, and that is what causing a lot of civilian casualties. So, you know, the alternative is not any better. So I think taking out Gaddafi's forces who are encircling these cities is absolutely paramount and vital in the medium and long run to stop totally the killing of civilians. And we really hope, I mean, I come from Libya myself, and I don't want to have even one single Libyan civilian killed, but we hope that this is done with the minimum of loss of life, but in the medium and long run this will totally prevent this genocide that has been going on for 31 days perpetrated by Gaddafi and his security battalions.
Well, Izzadeen Shukri Fashir, we know, and you mentioned, that the Arab League was not entirely united on action being taken against Libya. It was united on suspending the membership, but not on taking further military action. Syria in particular, very vocal against this type of action, as was Mauritania, among others. Is there a threat of a split within the League itself as this situation continues to evolve?
Yes, there is. And in fact, it's a threat, but it's not a very serious threat. The League has always been split. The League has rarely been united, and it doesn't really matter. Look at what this is about. Libya is a testing ground for the option of using military repression in order to end democratic uprising in the Arab world. If Tunisia and Egypt, the military in both countries, opted for protecting the democratic uprising, opted for abstaining from using force against civilians, in Libya you have the opposite situation, as the guest from London indicates. And everybody's watching. The countries you mentioned, Yemen and other countries, are watching to see this experiment, quote unquote, and to see what the result is. If it works, this unfortunately could be a model. Now, with the Security Council resolution, the game changes. Whether Arab states participate or not is in the area of symbolics. This will have an importance for the public, for the rhetoric, for the PR. But on the ground, this means that Gaddafi's position is weakened, that the opposition cannot be taken out, cannot be crushed, and therefore it is only a matter of time, and it's a matter of casualty. What is the cost, human cost and material cost, which it will take until Gaddafi goes down? But there is no other option now. With this in place, the war machine, if you want, is in place. And the only way out for Gaddafi is by leaving. This is not an option he's going to take voluntarily. So you do the math.
Well, let's just go to Juma Gamati in London. This is virtually unprecedented. You have a situation where you have Arab nations hand in hand with the UK, with France, with elements of the US against an Arab neighbor. What are the long-term ramifications of this likely to be? This is a very short-term scenario at the moment. It's not quite sure how it's going to pan out, but is there any way to see where this could go in the long term?
Well, first of all, it is not really against an Arab neighbor. It is against a tyrant, a dictator who has defied all norms and basically waged a mass war in his own population and started killing them en masse as they started coming out demonstrating peacefully. Secondly, I think the resolution came out yesterday, stipulated very clearly that it is against any foreign occupation of Libya, which I understand meaning against any foreign troops going into Libyan soil. So as long as the two things are clear, then we know that the whole purpose of this operation is actually to stop Gaddafi and his war machine and to basically turn Libya into a killing field. I think it's very similar to what we had in the early 90s, around 93, in Bosnia and also in Kosovo, where the Bosnian people were being absolutely bombarded and encircled and killed en masse. And I think it was a moral and legal duty of the international community to intervene and do something. I mean, here in Libya, we had to wait 31 days before the international community has decided to come in and do something. And hopefully now the killing will be stopped very soon. What we didn't want to have in Libya is obviously for the world community to have another mini Rwanda at their hand in North Africa, and that would have been absolutely disastrous. So it was very important for them to take action. And I think if things pan out as we hope they will, that the dynamics will change very quickly once the military strikes have taken place. The dynamics will change very quickly. Gaddafi's battalions or security forces start to collapse and disintegrate and fragment and maybe disseminate, and then and also the people can then come out and demonstrate peacefully and carry on with their peaceful demonstration. The Libyan population of 6 million are absolutely determined to do whatever it takes to change this regime peacefully. That's what they wanted. They wanted to change, to bring about change peacefully. Gaddafi chose to make it very, very bloody. In that sense, now we have a situation where hopefully the dynamics will change again, and the people of Libya can still bring about the change peacefully, or maybe the revolutionaries on the fighters on the side of the Libyan people can, for example, deal with the encirclement of cities like Tripoli and allow that the heavy populated capital Tripoli to actually take part and come en masse, and then hopefully bring about the total change of the regime.
Well, let's just take a look at the nuts and bolts of this particular situation, Izzadini. We heard the mention of Bosnia, for example, things that we've seen in the past. Now, it must be mentioned that when the no-fly zone was imposed in Bosnia, things like Srebrenica happened months after. One must remember as well the no-fly zone imposed over Iraq. Saddam stayed in power for 10 years after that.
Yes.
Is a no-fly zone enough?
A no-fly zone is not enough. A no-fly zone is never enough. But this time you have a no-fly zone and an authorization to use force in order to protect civilians, or to use any means in order to protect civilians. And this, in my view, is enough. Notice that the resolution is actually inviting all states to do this. All you have to do is notify the Secretary General before you do it. So any number of states can come in and use force in order to protect civilians. So with this mandate, I think it's going to be very difficult for Gaddafi to continue the kind of operations he's been conducting against his people. And I agree with Jamal from London that there might also be change in the military around Gaddafi himself. The way Gaddafi has been behaving made it very difficult for the others to do anything else other than going down this road. And now it is clear he has no friends outside, he has less and less friends inside, and he will have serious constraints on his ability to use force against his people. So again, it is a matter of time and cost before this comes to an end. But as you say, time could be very long. It could end up in Gaddafi strengthening his position in Tripoli and around it, while the east of the country moves into something else. And this is precisely the kind of output that we need to avoid.
Well, Juma Gamati, exactly what are you hoping to see arise out of this UN Security Council resolution in terms of what actually happens on the ground? Are you looking at airstrikes? Are you looking at the no-fly zone? At what stage does it become too much in terms of military action in Libya?
Well, we hope for a combination of the no-fly zone, the military strikes, and also all the other measures that prevent Gaddafi from bringing in mercenaries, bringing in weapons, bringing in fuel, which, by the way, he has a fuel crisis at the moment, and bring in other supplies which he uses in his war against his people. We hope that all these measures together will very soon start to have a major effect on his command and control ability, on his communication network, and on his ability to manipulate these battalions, security battalions, and use them to hit the cities which either have been liberated or actually encircle and strangle the cities that have not been liberated, such as Tripoli and maybe Tarhuna and Ben Walid. I am optimistic and confident that these measures will bring about these changes in dynamics very, very quickly, and we will see a gradual collapse and decimation of Gaddafi's forces and his ability to command and control. And that way, I think a lot of people will just run away, will rebel against him. Some people who are very close to him might really turn against him in a big way. Some of his sons might try to escape and run for it. And maybe he will find himself in a situation where he has no more options, no more cards to play, no more dice to throw in. And maybe the city of Tripoli itself, with a 2 million population, might find itself in a position where it can actually get rid of the strangle that Gaddafi has on it, and also come out en masse. And I think that will be the end game and the end of this whole very, very sad episode that we have seen in the last 31 days.
Well, to keep on looking, though, at some of the problems involved of this, Izzadin Shukri Fisher, there's a phrase used by military people, mission creep. Now, for example, you saw in Somalia, the US forces going into Somalia on a humanitarian operation, as it was called. It became an attempt at regime change. This has been repeated time after time. What safeguards can be put in place that this operation does not suddenly suffer from mission creep and another thing is happening in the guise of protecting civilians?
I think the safeguards that can be put in place would be around if the United Nations can very quickly organize among the groups, among the member states who are willing to participate in this process, and through its committee, the Security Council Committee, organize a coordination mechanism so that there are clear parameters to what can be done and what cannot be done, and also operational coordination among those who are going to intervene. But the risk of mission creep is very high. Remember, we're talking about protection of civilians, and the only way you do this protection is by bombing. You protect civilians by bombing the place. So inevitably, there will be people dead, there will be destruction, and you will hurt even those who you are trying to protect at some point. I'm not saying this in order to say that this resolution is bad for the Libyans. I don't think it's bad. I think it is probably the best available policy tool now, but it is, in fact, it is a very painful policy tool, and it is the other one is worse, I understand, if we just leave it to Gaddafi fighting his civilians, but both will involve casualties, both will hurt civilians, and both actually reflect a policy failure among the main players in this story. Obviously, Gaddafi is the main culprit in the story, but also the others who failed to deter him from using his military against the civilians early on in the process. This didn't happen overnight. It took days, and we could all see how Gaddafi was moving down this slippery slope, and I think much more robust action could have been done early on to protect us from where we are now.
Let me go to Juma Gamati in London on that particular issue. Is that there's been much talk about the US sitting back, the UK sitting back. But what about Libya's Arab neighbours? What about its African neighbours? Is there any responsibility to be borne by regional forces that sat back and allowed this to happen for this period of time?
Well, I think the Arab neighbors have done their best. We understand that Egypt and Tunisia are going through a transition stage, and you know they have their own problems, and they have their own internal dynamics to deal with. And the Arab League was very forceful in calling for this resolution and for the no-fly zone. The Muslim countries have been also vocal, and I think they have a meeting tomorrow on foreign ministers level. As for the African Union, we don't really expect much from them, because after all, the African Union is a bit of a creation of Gaddafi himself. And apart from and I'm talking about the non-Arab African countries. Apart from South Africa and Nigeria, who are obviously democracies and well-respected, most of the Arab countries, they have political systems very similar to Gaddafi's system, and most of these corrupt leaders, African leaders, we know that they are in Gaddafi's pocket anyway, so we don't expect much from them really, and also they don't have much heavy weight that they could bring in to help the dynamics and the situation. So we are really left with you know, the Arab League and basically the United Nations and the Security Council. But what is important to bear in mind here is that the most important factor is the Libyan population. We have 6 million Libyans who are absolutely determined to see this barbaric regime off. And they will do it. They wanted to do it the peaceful way. Gaddafi wanted it otherwise. So now, if they can be protected, they will resume these peaceful marches in their tens and hundreds of thousands, and that should be enough to bring about the change similar to what happened in Tunisia and Egypt. Either way, if it's going to be either peaceful or by military strikes to totally disable Gaddafi and his war machine, either way, we hope that the conclusion will be the same, that very soon we will see the downfall and the demise of Gaddafi and his sons, and Libya will get rid of a legacy of 42 years of sheer oppression and tyranny.
Very quickly at this point, and we are nearing the end, Zadrine, there has been criticism, and critics of the UNSC resolution has said that it portrays double standards, that no action has been taken against the Saudi-led intervention of Gulf states in Bahrain, putting down what the critics contend is a popular protest there. Your view of that very quickly.
Well, I think double standards are commonplace, and accusations of double standard are commonplace in international politics. But I think it's unfair to compare what's happening in Libya with what's happening in Bahrain. What's happening in Bahrain, I think, is the government has got it the wrong way. They are also going in the direction of oppressing their own people, and I think they will have to be brought back from this road. But I don't think you can compare this in any way to the scale of destruction and mayhem that is being imposed on the Libyan civilian population by its own government.
Thank you very much indeed. We're waiting to see whether that promise of a ceasefire is in fact implemented. My thanks to our guests here in Cairo, Ezzedrine Shukri Bashir, and in London, Juma Gamati. And thank you for watching. Remember, we always welcome your views. You can contact us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.